can kickstart.
Right.
Ian has left. Let me know when you're live, Hans.
Right. We're live. Right.
Oh, yes.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this, the last listening session of 2023. It was a bit of a mad rush to get this going, what with everybody being away and everything, but it's nice to know that we've got quite a few people who seem to have nothing better to do between Christmas and New Year. Attendance is certainly better than I anticipated. So the purpose of tonight's session, we got 2 submissions to just listen to for pure pleasure. And then other than that, it is mostly to go through, because obviously coming up in 2 days' time, so on the midnight on the 31st of December is the closing date for the 2023, or submissions for the 2023 WSRS competition. So I've heard in the past that people struggle with understanding things like the classes. So this at least gives us an opportunity to discuss these. We've got a few past judges. Technology permitting, we have the coordinator of the competition. We've got 2 past winners as well. So there's a reasonable amount of experience here of the competition specifically collected in this little group. So hopefully whatever questions you have about the competition, we should be able to enlighten you and answer these questions. The idea obviously being to get people to actually enter the competition, because apart from anything, it's good fun. It gives you an idea as to, because obviously we all, it's a bit of a better audience than your mum, for example, because obviously your mum's going to say everything you do is brilliant. And then, of course, there's always that chance that you might actually not only get your name going down in posterity on one of the trophies, but you might even win a pair of microphones, which not to be sneezed at. So if we can just do a quick round of introductions, just who you are, where you are, and then we'll get on with the show after that. Axel, can you start for us, please?
Yes. Hello. Good evening, everyone. I'm Axel. I am a wide sound recordist and special designer, and currently traveling along the East Atlantic Flyway on the west coast of Africa, currently in Senegal, making documentaries about migratory birds for local people. And I did also win something in the competition as a couple of years after I joined in, so that's really exciting, and I'm hoping to win again. But yeah, thank you, Hans.
Right. Sue.
Sorry, just can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, so I have initially started entering the competition, I don't know, maybe about 10 years ago, mainly because I was starting out in sound recording and really wanted to get some feedback on how I could improve recordings. So I've won a few restricted classes, and a few years ago I also won the overall competition. Sorry, what else did you want me to talk about?
Oh, just tell us where you are as well, for the just as a matter of interest.
Oh, okay. Well, I live in Australia. I'm on the East Coast. Yeah, and most of my recording has been done pretty much all of my recordings done in the Southern Hemisphere. I've done a bit in Papua New Guinea, Tasmania, and a fair bit on the East Coast of Australia. Yeah, and I'm interested in... Oh, sorry, someone asking a question? No,
don't worry.
Yeah, so I'm interested in particularly interested in the competition I know what I'm interested in from an aesthetic point of view with birdsong, and I've always struggled with the 2-minute thing because I prefer long duration recordings and multi-species recordings, which can be hard to get a good segment in 2 minutes. And for single species recordings, often it's hard to get a good, 2 minutes is quite a long time. But yeah, I'd particularly be interested always in getting feedback from judges on what it was about the microphone techniques that were either successful or that were problematic with any of my recordings. So yeah, that's one of the things I'm interested in. Over and out.
Yeah, Hans, you there? Oh, we lost Hans. I'm not sure why. Hans. Okay, we lost him. I can keep running.
Shall I jump in, Axel, and keep
Yes,
it
please.
going?
Yes, please, Chris. Thank you.
Okay, my name's Chris Hales. I'm based in Switzerland. I'm a retired conservationist, I think is probably the best way to name myself. I'm in opposition to Sue. I'm probably more of a single species person than a soundscapes person. Although the first time I've been a member of WSRS for probably 15, 16 years or something, but maybe even longer now. I only entered the competition for the first time 3 years ago, and I did reasonably well then, I think. And so I'm interested in the things we've got to discuss this evening, since we're only 2 days away from the deadline.
Fab. Thank you, Chris.
Over.
Next is Dave Williams.
Evening, everyone. Dave Williams. I live in Guildford in Surrey, probably the noisiest part of England you could live in. Very noisy, so I can't do much recording around here. I do a couple of trips abroad now and again. Currently booked for Sweden in June this year. Yes, I've been a judge, and I've done quite a few entries, a few trophies. Silver Fox twice, but that was a while ago. The last thing I won was the Roger Boughton Award, so that was nice, particularly as I made the award for Roger. See it come back home again. But I suppose I'd probably go for single species more than anything. But I like the habitat recordings as well, with a nice chorus, not necessarily a dawn chorus, but a chorus, marsh chorus or something like that I like. But it's very hard to choose. I find it very hard to choose what the judges are going to like, because you don't really know. There's no hard and fast criteria to say it's got to be this, it's got to be that. And I always think of some birds are very, very easy to record, really. Some of them very common birds. And of course, it depends where you are as well. What might sound fantastic for me is probably run-of-the-mill stuff for Sue. She hears it all the time. But it's something different. I think it's very good. It's a difficult thing to be a judge in some respects, but also very enjoyable. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Dave. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to hear more about your experience. And yeah, if I might add, it's yeah, I think in the end is what you like, which is important to share, I think.
Well, the other thing is, it's not just, you're saying it's difficult what to enter. The other thing as well is, and this is something that you can't really account for at all, is obviously that you have no idea what you're competing against either. So you can have one year where there's, theoretically a lot of the other entries are not as interesting, and then you could have another year where everybody's got a great entry or very interesting entries. So that makes it quite difficult as well.
Indeed. Do you want to keep going on calling who needs to do introduction, Hans?
No,
Oh,
you can
good,
carry.
good.
You carry on.
All right, coolio. Next one, Andy Martin, please.
Hey, so Andy Martin. I'm in Seattle, Washington, in the Pacific Northwest of the U.S. I usually spend my time recording around the Northwest, mostly soundscape recording, long form, with a lot of individual species. But these past couple of years, I've been finally doing a lot of traveling outside of my area, and like most recently, just came back from Costa Rica with all kinds of excitement in my head. This will be my first year submitting to the contest. If I can get myself together, like I said, I just got back on the 25th. And if I can get myself to be choosy of from my recordings of this year, then hopefully I'll get a chance to enter. And I'm taking it as sort of a personal challenge, not to find the best thing that I possibly can, but to find something short enough. Because like I said, I do a lot of long form recording. There are a few things that please me than more than listening to the developing story of a dawn or a dusk chorus. So when you have something that's 2 hours long like that, finding a 2-minute segment to focus on can be a little challenging. So that's what I'm hoping to provide for y'all.
Thank you, Andy. Indeed, tricky thing to get out of our long forms. Definitely. But yeah, it's part of the game, I guess. But we're gonna talk about it later. Thank you, Andy. Next one, Andrew Rock.
Hi, I'm Andrew Rock from Brisbane, Australia. Purely amateur, haven't entered anything yet. I specialise mainly in recording wind noise and aeroplanes. Trying to get dawn choruses, of course. So I don't usually have anything that's sort of suitable for a 2-minute thing. Okay, that's it.
Well, hopefully maybe this year you're gonna submit it. we're gonna force you to submit it. Thank you, Andrew. Chris Hale. Oh no, Chris already done it. Roger, please. Roger's marriage.
Sorry. Hello, Axel. Hi. I'm just trying to get the video up. Hang on.
Don't worry about the video. Don't worry about the video. We only do audio.
All right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Fine.
thank you.
I've been a member, I don't know, since I think the 70s, but I've never submitted anything competition, and I've tended to just record stuff with an open mic, generally rushing through the bush, trying to capture whatever animal that we're after or whatever bird. So it's all very much ad hoc, which is probably why I've not bothered submitting anything for the competition. I live in the South Hams in England, which is a lovely part of the world. I spent the last couple of years, certainly in the summer, trying to record swifts, which you hear for, a brief part of a minute, swirling round, and then, you have a big period of silence. So I'm trying to get my head around Audacity to try and link these things together. And one day I might put a presentation together for our local village. We have done some slideshows with some of my sounds and things, but that was some time ago, and that was for a local zoo in Hampshire when we lived there. So I'm afraid that's me, nothing very exciting. Unfortunately, we haven't done any great trips abroad recently, but I always take a microphone and recorder when we do go. So I've probably got quite a lot of stuff. It's really a matter of sorting it, and perhaps one day I might enter something.
I'm sure you will, Roger. You definitely should. But we push you also. Don't worry.
Very nice talking to you, Axel. We've been to Senegal and we walked into Gambia just along the way from that. And I remember seeing ospreys fishing off the coast there when we were there. So wonderful.
Yeah.
And Senegal's got some fantastic birds. Even
Yeah.
my sort of expertise, we could work them out, and really great, lovely place. I'd like to go back there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. We're gonna go to Gambia also next month. Yeah, it's really overwhelming place after the desert.
Yeah. Have you been bothered
Cool,
by the locals? Because I remember a lot of the
Roger, sorry if I interrupt, but just I want to do the introduction of all 16 people.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, sorry, don't worry. We chat later about that. But yeah, there is always a nice experience, adventure here.
Yeah. Okay. Cheers.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you. Next one, Tim Green.
Hi folks, I'm from Durham in the northeast of England. I mostly record soundscapes, usually sort of sparse, wild soundscapes which are fairly quiet, and I tend to go for long form as well.
Fab, thank you, Tim. Mike Bullock.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Greetings from Massachusetts and USA, Northeast, from deep in the woods. I am a composer and I tend to, so a lot of my work tends towards installation work and composition, but more and more I've been interested in how my work and our work can intersect with research. Have had the opportunity to work with some biologists on bat research, which has been. Hi, sorry.
No, don't worry. Fixed it. You can keep going, Mike.
Working on research with bats I've been doing for a few years. So though I didn't include any bat recordings in my most recent the recordings that I submitted. Yeah, it's really I've just been a member for a handful of years and submitted a couple of times and placed in one of the competitions, which was very exciting. And I actually had a question or just something to think about that's maybe been answered before. One of my favorite recordings from this year was a sound of an underwater sound from a stream, but with no wildlife in it. So I wasn't sure how to categorize it. But it's definitely the kind of recording I'd like to share with people. So how that fits into the competition and what we're doing here. Yeah, thank you.
Sounds good, Mike. That's the right place to ask these questions. So thank you for joining us. Joe Kennedy.
Hi, I'm Joe Kennedy. I live in Todmorden, which is in the South Pennines in West Yorkshire. I work creatively with sound. I sometimes make ecological sound art, and a lot of my work involves my own field recordings. Like many of the other people who've spoken so far, I tend to take longer recordings, and they tend to be soundscapes rather than recordings of individual species. I have entered another element of the competition in the past. I've entered the documentary, and I've thought about entering the creative class as well, but the 2-minute barrier, the 2-minute limit there has always kind of proved a little tricky for me. Anyway, I'm just really interested to hear tonight's discussion, and I guess I would have, my questions would be about what's your tolerance of anthropogenic noise? Because it's very difficult these days in the British Isles. Not quite as difficult as if I lived in Guildford, but it's still difficult up here with aeroplanes and traffic to get clean sounds. And I'm also interested in, there's something in the rules about processing. So a discussion about what type of processing is or isn't allowed would be interesting too. Thanks.
Sounds good. Yeah, all questions that can be answered. Thank you, Joe. Pat Neve.
Yes, hello, I'm Pat. I'm on the east coast of Australia, just north of Sydney. Very much a novice, and I've been recording mainly soundscapes. Never entered a competition before, and I've been a member for about 2 years, so just interested to hear the discussion.
Fabulous. Thank you, Pat. Thank you for joining us. David Simpkins.
Hi, yes, I'm based in Northamptonshire in the UK, about 15 miles from where the AGM normally takes place at Rutland Water. Pure amateur. I've been doing binaural audio recording since the 1970s, but only got into wildlife recording 12, 13 years ago, when a good friend of mine took me to hear some nightingales locally. And I've been hooked on that ever since, I must admit. I only tend to record locally, so nothing very special, but it's been interesting to document the changes and sadly the declines of the local nightingale population.
Nice. Thank you, David, for joining us. And yeah, nightingales have been a reason for many people, I think, to start listening to nature, their lovely sound. Thank you. Ian Brady. Hope your mic is working now. Let's see.
Good evening.
Yes, it's working.
Yeah, well, I'm back to the old setup. Yeah, tried to get some new kit to work, and Zoom doesn't seem to like it, so I've had to revert back. Yeah, I'm Ian Brady. I've been a member for a long time. Yeah, like somebody said earlier, I think it was Roger, back in the 70s. I'm also the competition coordinator, so it's interesting to hear your what people are saying. Yes, I'll try and answer some questions. Yeah, the one big thing I would say is that we are underrepresented from the American membership. I think we have a good number of people from in America who are members, but we tend not to get. I know Mike's entered, and I think we might have one other entry, but in general, we don't tend to get too many from over there. Australia, on the other hand, always does well, and we get some absolutely amazing recordings from there. So yeah, let's hear more from the US.
Andy, Mike, that was for you. Thank you, Ian.
Let's see what we can do.
Cool. Next, who do we have? Felix Golenko.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, you can.
I'm Felix Golenko. I'm from the country of highways. Some call it also Germany. And the internet sucks, sorry for that. I joined the society just 2 days ago, so I'm very new. I'm a young, thank you. I'm a young documentary filmmaker, and I started about 2 years ago recording also sound, just for film mainly. But currently I'm working on a documentary that will be finished in Dolby Atmos. And for it, I recorded 3D soundscapes in the South Pacific with triple MS and also Schoep's ORTF 3D. So I have tasted blood and looking forward to discover nature through sound. So I'm very curious to listen this evening.
Fabulous. Thank you, Felix, for joining us. And yeah, you're in the right place, definitely the right place. Maybe you can also compete in the annual competition if you got something that you feel like submitting. So great. Welcome to the club. Who else do we have? Les, please.
Hi, Les Goodyear. I suppose I'm really mainly interested in the things that you can't normally hear, which is a bit of a strange thing maybe for sound recording. But those who know me know the sort of things I mean, underwater sounds and sounds of insects, which occur at a vibrational level, and therefore we can't hear them. I've been a member since about 2008, and I've never entered the competition, mainly because I'm not really a competitive person, so that sort of thing doesn't sort of really interest me. But also, I'm never really sure what sort of sounds would be suitable. I suppose that's the other thing.
Oh yes, you are the experimenter. But I'm sure you got so many interesting recordings when you do the listening session, the private ones between members. So I'm sure that you can find something out there. But we're gonna try and go through also, more and more unusual recordings and what could be interesting. But it's wildlife sounds, so it's just a matter of finding the right place where to submit in the right category, I think.
Yeah.
But cool. Thank you, Les. We miss Jeff E. iPhone Jeff E. If you can introduce yourself. And if not, we are done with introductions because we have another couple of people. Unless I forgot someone, I think we have a couple of people that are just listening in, but all the other ones have introduced themselves. So please let us know if you still need to introduce yourself. No? Great. Hans, do you want to keep going or just like do it together?
Yeah, we can move on together. It's not a problem. I haven't actually introduced myself.
Yes.
Yeah, my name's Hans. Unlike you, Felix, who comes from the land of the motorway, I am in the UK, based in not the land of milk and honey, but the land of pork pies and Stilton cheese, which I think is probably slightly better than motorways. Yeah, I've been recording for a couple of years, and I, like Dave, have been on a judge in the past, so I won't say I have an idea as to what makes a good recording, but I have experienced the process. So yes, yeah, hopefully we'll be able to answer some questions in that regard as well.
Yeah. So should we say first what exactly the competition is?
Yeah, we can do that.
You do it.
Well, no, you can do it.
Can I interpose?
Yeah, of course.
Make sure we don't forget the documentary part of this competition, because I don't coordinate that. That's Simon's area, but nonetheless, it is something that Joe mentioned, and it is an important thing. The main competition is obviously what most people enter, and at the up to press, I've got 14 members who've entered. I haven't done a head count on how many actual entries we've had, but I don't know what Simon's had as regards documentary entries. So make sure we don't actually forget the documentary side of things. Okay, I'll sign off there.
Absolutely. Yes, Hans, you were saying.
Yeah. Right. As Ian has just alluded to, there are two annual competitions that are run separately because they have very different entry requirements and judging criteria, I would imagine. One is the documentary competition, which essentially is it's somewhere between 3 and 8 minutes, generally speaking, and it's pretty much what it says. It's a documentary, so you can use all sorts of sound, and in this particular case, as long as they are credited, they do not have to necessarily be sounds that you specifically recorded, and it just tells a general story. So this is the sort of thing where you can have interviews and all sorts of things, as long as it all contributes to the overall telling of a story. And I suppose, once again, if criteria basically as far as what everything that makes a good short story would apply in this particular case. Something of interest, you know, a good introduction, a good middle bit, and then a good ending. The second competition is probably what most people generally enter because probably a little bit easier and probably a whole lot less work, which is the general competition, divided into a few categories, which we'll get into later on in the run. And that's basically most of the categories anyway are more restrictive in terms of what they allow you to do in terms of modifying and processing your files. And these competitions are obviously things that get held every year at the end of the year. And they are the overall winner in the general competition is generally can win a pair of microphones most years. So yeah, it's always worth entering. So that's what not what the competitions are, but that's a general background as to what the competitions offer, shall we say, and what they're about.
That makes sense. I think
yeah, Karen.
No, sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was just going to say, unless Ian's got anything to add to that or elaborate further.
Yeah, I can do. Yeah, fundamentally, the main competition, as we'll call it, rather than the documentary, we'll call it, has 5 different classes, as most people are aware. But for those who are like Felix, who've just joined, there's an individual class, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's one individual, animal, bird, reptile, insect, whatever it might be. We even had a tree entered a couple of years ago. So yeah, it was an individual, and it was anyway. So yes, the individual class. There's then the species class, which is usually more than one of a given species. So it could be a duet, it could be just a number of the same species of animal, bird, whatever. Combination, this is whereby 2 different or more than, could be more than 2, but 2 plus species are making something that might where they may interact with each other, play off one another, or just it makes a nice overall sound. So that's the 3rd class. 4th class is habitat, which is again fairly self-explanatory. Lots of people do these sort of recordings, sort of general open mic recordings. The 5th class is the most recent. Having said that, it's still quite a long time, quite a long one, and it's the only one where we allow for any modification, shall we say. I'll elaborate on that in a moment, but yeah, basically you make your own created sounds up. Now, if you go back over the sound magazines over the last few years, you'll have heard, for example, Simon's Beats, where he had different animals making the sound, and he put it together to make a rather amusing and brilliant, in my book, a combination of sounds. But it's any creative class. So I think somebody actually created an English meadow or an English garden from recordings taken from all over the place, put them all together, and you ended up with a created sort of atmosphere. But it was creative. The first 4 categories, you are allowed to put some filtering on. So basically, if you've got some low pitch rumble or some high pitch whistling or something you want rid of, you can. it's much more difficult these days to spot which has been worked on and which hasn't, but we have to trust people. But basically what the idea is if you put it on for one bit of it, it's got to be on for the whole lot, not just part of the actual recording. It's a continuous thing. So you can filter, you can modify to a certain extent, but that's it. You shouldn't be going boosting and dropping, and as this recording goes through, should be one continuous level.
So a global filter, in other words.
Yeah, exactly. It's for the whole entry. There are two other areas which the general entries are subdivided into the open and the restricted. Restricted is whereby someone who's not won in the past can enter, and they will then go into the along with everything else. You can still win the overall categories, but if you haven't won before, you haven't come first or second in any of the categories before, then you can enter as a restricted member, and you will be sort of subdivided out, and just everything is judged on block, and then if a restricted entries are placed in that, then they would obviously be highly probable to win the restricted set category. You can win both the restricted and the open at the same time because you've got the best recording. That's what happens. But if you haven't, then the restricted will be. So there are 4 places in each category except the creative. So you've got open first and second and restricted first and second in the first 4 categories. And then on top of that, we have fieldcraft, whereby somebody may have entered made an entry whereby they can explain what they have done, how the recording was created, how or worked on. So you may have spent a week or 2 working on this particular thing, and you came up, and that's how he does, and it has to be explained on at the end of the document. And the non-avian, again, it's fairly self-explanatory because most entries have got feathers involved. We have the non-avian category, which allows for a winner to basically get to sort of go into that area as well. It may be you're not necessarily going to win anything else. The overall winner comes from every single recording we've listened to. So the judges will give their comments and their judgment dependent on the criteria within the judging, and then the overall winner, which is the Silver Fox, will be the one that's judged to be the best recording from the whole of the entries. And the judges this year are going to have one hell of a hard job, and I've only heard a few of them so far. So anyway, that's just a general background of the competition now and how we put it together. So if you got any queries, questions, then I'm open to try and answer if I can.
Thank you, Ian. Yeah, there was lots to take in. I'm sure for people that haven't done it before, but there is a form available also online where you can read all these things, and there is literally the form where you just where you have to submit your recordings with. So there is a lot of the same information is there written down, and if you have more questions, definitely ask. Feel free to ask now, even if you've got more questions. Like Chris, raise your hand. Go for it.
Hi. Thank you, Ian, for running through that. Sometimes the difference between the species and the individual can be quite difficult to tease out. But my specific question is about mammals. I've noticed in the past that there's a separate mammals award that comes out. Is there a separate category for mammals? Because I wanted to submit a mammal this year, And I thought, well, do I put this under species? Do I put it under individual? Or I couldn't find a mammal category to drop it in.
But we don't have, no, we don't have a mammals section. It's non-avian.
So that was
yeah,
it, non-avian. Yeah.
Yeah.
So does non-avian have to fit into one of the other categories, or is there a non-avian category standing by itself?
No, it fits into one of the others. So if you had wolf pack howling, that would be species.
Right.
If there was a wolf on its own, which may happen, I have no idea. But you could have, for example, a red deer on its own, without any others. They can be in the distant background, but it's a concentration on one single animal or birds. That is the difference between individual and species. Species tends to be a multiple from multiple sources at the same time of a similar level. Whereas you can have, for example, if you record a nightingale in Germany, then there's a very, very, very strong chance there'll be another one 100 yards away. And so you can't, is that an individual? Is it a species? It would be an individual because it's the one you concentrate in, unless you had the mics in between the two and you were basically playing one off against the other, they were doing how they work. That would then become species. So it's. I'm not going to say, if you put your entry in and you said to me, which do you put this in? I'd listen to it. I listen to every single entry that comes through the door or through the ether, and I have in the past gone back to entrants and said, I think this one should go into this category. Because I think it doesn't, in my opinion, but I've had a kickback and said, no, I definitely want it to go in there. Well, fine, that's where you want to put it. That's where you want to put it. It's not my call. It's just my advice. That's all. But no, we don't have a mammals, specifically a mammals category.
Well, non-avian was my.
Non-avian could be insects. It could be, as I say, trees. It could be underwater. Unless it's a bird diving into the water and making.
But it's drawn from the existing 5 categories.
Yeah, and I tend to put that in. Nobody actually puts there on the entry form. Nobody sort of goes tick non-avian. I will go through and go, that one in my book fits the bill. And again, the judges might have other opinions as well. They might think, oh no, that one fits the bill as well. So that's where the judges are actually also part of the system. That's the way we do it.
Is there a non-avian box to tick on the forms?
No.
Right.
No,
okay.
No. That's what I say. I do that. I make that judgment call, and because if it isn't a bird, and some of the recordings I've got this time are, you think, what the hell is that? And it's a good job it's been written down on the form, because I wouldn't have known whether it was a mammal or a bird in some respects. I will make that call and put it into the non-avian category. And again, the judges will do the same. And if they think, it's, but I have more information than they have, because I don't pass on any information to the judges other than the title of the track. I don't give them any other data whatsoever. It's a totally blind system. I've been asked by judges in the past to give them further information, and sometimes I might, if I think they're saying, oh, this wasn't, there was a black grouse recording a few years ago and it was so quiet that it was unbelievable until the black grouse made a sound. And they said, oh, this must have been filtered to hell. And I asked the actual entrant, and he said, nope, it's I can send you the original if you want. So I will sometimes go back to the entrant and say, look, what have you know, how has this been made, or what have you done? But I will not pass on location. I won't pass on any other information than the title on the track, because I treat it the way I think it should be judged. And I've speak, and Simon agrees with me as well, is that if you sent a photograph into a photographic competition, they look at the photograph. They don't know what the camera was. They don't know what the lenses were. They don't know whereabouts of the world it is. Nothing. It's a photograph. And I'm trying to make this sound competition being judged in a similar way. So it's purely going on the sound. And I hope that's, you know, if somebody else takes this job on them, they may look at it from a different point of view. But that's the way I do it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right there.
Ian,
Thanks for the information. Cheers.
I agree with you, Ian. It's absolutely right. It's just the final sound that's been entered that matters. Doesn't matter who, where, or what, because you could be influenced when you find out who it is. You might think, "Oh, that person's a very good recorder. This must be a good one."
Yeah, that's also why I make sure that nobody knows who the judges are, because again, we've had entrants who say, "Oh, who are the judges?" Because they'll change the recordings they enter dependent on the judges. Because they know some people will be more likely to take, you know, like some recordings more than others. And unfortunately, so far, I have not had anybody from outside the UK judge. But now we've got the internet in a good set of, you know, I think I might actually move that abroad from next year onwards. I might try and twist a few arms to get somebody who can judge from abroad as well.
I thought, Ian, you were going to say the judges might get bribed if they knew who they were.
Well, I wouldn't. Far from it for me to say, thanks. I'm sure the odd pint has tried as part of it.
Brilliant, thank you, Ian.
Sorry, I just want to add in there, sorry, I just want to add in there one thing very quickly, Chris. In answer to your question, if you're absolutely adamant that you want a track submitted or considered for the non-avian award, there is a section in the entry form that says any other relevant information. I would imagine you can specify there that you would like it to be considered for the non-avian award. Am I correct, Ian?
You can put whatever you like on the entry form, yeah. And I can, and okay. Yeah, if you put that there, that would be something I'd take into consideration.
No, my dilemma actually was this year was that I was looking at what I got that I thought was worthwhile putting forward. And one was a non-avian sound. And I thought, okay, so which category do I put it in? And since we're only allowed to enter it into one category, that's your one shot. Do I put this mammal one in instead of species or instead of individual, when I felt I'd got other individuals or other species that could go in? So I was trying to juggle, and I thought, well, if one's avian and one's non-avian, can I put two into that particular bit? But from what I'm understanding, no, I couldn't.
We do restrict it to one entry per category. You can enter all 5 categories, no problem there. But yeah, we do ask only one entry per category from each. And to go back to somebody who was saying the 2-minute is a bit of a restriction, you've got to bear in mind that we've got maybe, I think last year we had 63 entries. If you think that each one's 2 minutes, you know, you have 120 minutes of listening, at least twice, at least 3 or 4 times. So you can say that's for the judges. That's a fair bit of time to go through and try and work out. And if you gave them a sort of an open-ended amount of time, then I think that'd be a bit unreasonable on the judges, to be honest. So that's
why it's also 2 minutes, isn't it?
That's one of the main reasons we keep it to 2 minutes. Yeah.
Just one thing that you said now, Ian, that I would like to clarify is you can submit different recordings for different categories. So just one thing that I got a bit confused there. I just wanted to clarify, just to make sure. I can have 5 different sounds and different like recordings, and I can submit for each recording for a different category, but I can't submit the same category, the
Correct.
same recording for many categories.
Well, well, that'd be. I
Right.
don't think anybody's ever done that, but I can't see any reason why you couldn't. If you thought, you know,
Well, as long as that
fulfilled
recording
the
clarifies.
criteria.
Yeah, I was going to say, which is going to be a bit tricky,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I sent literally, some years I felt good, and I sent literally a recording for each category. Also because sometimes you don't know if you think that something that you have is not really that great, but in the end it's actually pretty good. I think a lot of times we are, you know, our own perception of something tells us that, oh, that's maybe not that great, but actually it's really good.
And the length doesn't have to be 2 minutes. The recording that was entered a number of years ago, which I thought was absolutely brilliant but got nothing, was only, I think it was like 50 something seconds. And one of the criticisms that the judge came up with, it wasn't long enough. And it's like, well, that's the length of time the bird sang for. You know, you can't make it any longer. But that, you know, that was a judge's decision. I don't influence them. I've got no. I give them the recordings and they go off and judge it. I don't make any comments after that. But I think one year I had a 2-second entry. Didn't get anywhere. But I would strongly suggest that you don't make it 2 seconds long. But it doesn't have to be stretched out to 2 minutes, but make sure it doesn't go over 2 minutes, please. Because we have had people who've, what tends to happen is that if you use something like Reaper and you put when you go to create your track, there's a tick box in Reaper that if you don't untick it, will add a second to your recording. And your recording goes 2 minutes and 1 second long. And one of the judges once went, "Oh, it's too long." Well, it was silence for a second at the end, you know. But yeah, it just be a bit wary when you're doing things, because some judges can be a little bit more, than others.
Right.
I'm the more lenient one, I think, when it comes to this.
Sue, you got a question?
Yes, I just wondered if you could talk about the extent to which the recordings are judged based on the content of the recordings, which is basically an aesthetic kind of thing, and to what extent it's based on technical aspects, you know, recording techniques and absence of any kind of obvious faults. Could one of the judges or any of the judges talk about that?
I think it's all of those things, Sue. I think you listen to it as a whole and take all those things into account. I mean, how hard it was to get that recording, how hard you worked to get it, and how good it sounded, and the background noise. If it doesn't interfere with it too much, that's fine, I think, anyway. But another judge might feel something different. Say there's no real hard and fast rules about this. A lot of it is down to the judges.
The judging is sort of broken into 4 different areas. There's overall quality, subject, presentation, and technical quality, and each one is given a sort of a score, and the overall score is then put in, and then we'll sort of that you take. So it's a 0 to 25, so it's 25% for each category, and the judges are given sort of guidance as to how what those categories mean. I was a judge about 25 years ago, so I can't remember, but the assessment criteria is as follows. Overall appeal or overall quality is impact created on first listening and subsequent increase and decrease on further listening. So it's generally your first impressions, wow, that's a good, the subject is choice of species, quality. All this is utterly subjective. There's no objectivity about it whatsoever. Nobody could actually put down anything down. Presentation, that's the most straightforward, I would suggest, in that they, is it telling a story? That's something I always fail to do. And, does it sort of build? Is there a way in which you could sort of think, yeah, that's a good presentation, it's been put together nicely, or it, has it got the fades in there? Does it fade in and fade out nicely? Is it, and the technical quality might be that somebody asked about earlier on, and we'll possibly come to it, but how good a quality is it? This is why I don't tell the judges where the recordings were made, because obviously if you're making a recording in Gilwell, down in the south of England or somewhere, you're gonna struggle. No matter what you do, you're gonna struggle. Todmorden a bit nicer, except it's in Yorkshire, but never mind. Sorry, Joe. But yeah, it's there's less ambient human noise, but we try to look at the technical quality, or they try, how good was it from how good is the signal compared to the background, if that's what you're looking for. If it's an habitat recording, obviously that's a bit irrelevant. But if you're looking at a species or an individual, then you want that individual to be the thing you hear mostly. You don't really want to hear the motorbike in the background or whatever.
But you don't want any overmodulation at all, Ian.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's no excuse for that anymore with 32-bit recording. Sorry, but no. But sorry, but no. Yeah, you're right. But equally, I don't want. I think too many entries are too quiet. I don't do anything to the recordings when they come in. I literally put them together and send them off to the judges. I don't modify them in any way, shape, or form. I don't normalize the levels or anything. If you send in a very, very quiet recording, I'll possibly get back to you and say, can you turn the wick up a bit? But if it's okay, then I'll just send it through anyway. If it's overmodulated, I'd go back and say, maybe you need to do something to it. But in general, every single recording I get, I put through Audacity. I don't change it. And I just put it on a big list of files and send it. We transfer it off to the judges. So that's the way it's done.
Right. Thanks for that, Ian. Just as because it's getting a bit talking intensive at the minute. So
sorry.
No, that's fine. Not a problem. I just had an idea, on the spot idea. So, Mr. Williams, you've been a judge you've been a judge in the past.
Yeah.
I will play one of our contributions, and how you sort of give us a mock assessment as you would through a judging session, and then we'll see how the piece does, and you can sort of talk us through what you're thinking and why you're making the judgment calls you make.
Oh, it's a bit of pressure there, Hans.
I'm sure you can handle it, Dave.
Hans has also been a judge, so he should be able to do this.
Yeah, but I've already heard these before, so I disqualify myself. So yes, right.
Is there a title?
Yeah, I'll give you the title now. Sorry, I'm sure there was actually. I'll give you just very quick background, because actually thinking about it now, there isn't actually a title on this particular one. But if you just give me a second, I'll give you what you need, Dave, or I'll try and extract what you need anyway. Sorry, wrong one. My apologies. Just bear with me for a second here. Let's just call this Mongolian Dawn Chorus.
Oh, wow.
So here we go. Now I do realize that to our recorder, contributing recorders, that was a bit of an unfair call, but nonetheless. Dave, give us your thoughts.
No, I muted you, Dave. That's why I can't hear you.
Okay, hear me now. Can you hear me now, all right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, fascinating recording. Very well recorded, I thought. Lots going on there, and it sort of started and built up a bit, then sort of naturally started to fade out as the recording finished. So presentation, I thought, was very good. Recording was good. The level seemed pretty good there. I've got no idea what any of the birds were, if they were birds, but very good recording. I thought that was excellent. I can't really fault that one at all. I can't get anything wrong with it. It's a little bit short, but if the chorus was stopping anyway, that's what it is. You know, as Ian was saying, it hasn't got to be 2 minutes. 2 minutes is quite a long time when you're listening to the same thing over and over again. I thought that was very good. Good recording.
Yeah, also good fade in and fade out.
Yeah, just right. Wasn't too long a fade. Sometimes the fade is too long. It takes too long to get going. That was just right, I thought. Very good.
And in which category would you? In which category would you place it?
The habitat, isn't it? I think. Got to be.
I think
very much.
Let's say a couple of examples. If it was only, I think I heard a sort of like, what was this, snipe, the drumming?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
So let's try and imagine how these would fit in different categories if we take, different variations of these recordings. So now this is a habitat because there are many species that create a picture of a place. Okay, there is not a focus on something happening here. There is not like there is that bird following that bird, that animal doing that because of that animal.
Yeah, it's not just a bird singing in a tree. That is a good area of habitat that supports lots of different species.
Exactly. So, but if we only had the drumming, so that on its own, or like really focused on, that's a single bird that is making a sound, and if it's really focused, so you don't have all the other birds around, all the other noises, but you only have that bird, that would become an individual recording. If we would have two of these snipe drumming, one on the left and one on the right, for example, doing the creating a nice sort of combination. Let's not use the word combination. Let's nice interaction between two species. Then it's a species example. That's a species recording. But then let's say that the snipe is chased by I don't know if that would happen, by an eagle, and you hear the eagle. So you have a snipe drumming, and then you have the eagle calling, and you have this sort of interaction between two species. But the focus is all about this interaction. It's not about them being in Mongolia on a whatever habitat. It's about this an interaction between two birds, two different animals. That becomes a combination, right?
Yeah.
So I hope that I just wanted to explain that, because
is it
really tricky for me to differentiate.
We don't call it the encounter anymore. It's combination, is it? It's called.
Yeah, it's combination. Yeah.
used to call it encounter, which was always a bit odd.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah, it's a bit odd. But yeah, I sort of like, I think understanding the difference between species combination makes you, it sort of I want to clarify these two categories, which are really different, but at the beginning it's a bit tricky to get them, and that's why it's easier to submit to a habitat, because you know that it's just a soundscape with lots of stuff happening. But if there is an interaction of some kind, jackdaws mobbing a big bird of prey and a big, like, a marsh harrier or whatever, and you have these two species calling together, then it's a combination, right? But if you have a nice soundscape of a rainforest where there is nothing really focused on, but it just makes you feel like you're in a rainforest, then it's a habitat. And I'm gonna stop my explanation here. I hope that was clear.
Right. Okay. Should we repeat the exercise with the other recording that I've got?
Yeah, that Mongolia must have been a great place to go.
Yeah, unfortunately, that was a bit of a giveaway because I'm sure we all know who it was.
Well, I know several people who went. So.
yeah, but we've had someone on here who couldn't shut up about going to Mongolia.
Yes.
And I was rubbing it in, just pushing my nose out of joint. But yeah, okay, so that's that one. Right, so I have another one.
There's the man who's always banging on about Botswana.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Criticism taken. Anyway, just for the benefit of everybody, that was Clive Davies who recorded that. And there was common cuckoo, common snipe, grey nightjar, and swinhoe's snipe. And apparently there are plenty of other bird calls, but he still has no idea what they are.
Wow. Nice selection, that.
Yeah, and critically as well, this is not a mix. So this would not classify for the creative
no,
category.
as it was.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Right. Okay. And then I won't say where this was recorded, but let me try and give you let me try and make up a title for you, Dave.
You're on the spot today, Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Let's call them howlers roaring in preparation for the day.
Oh wow.
Okay. So it's sorry. If you give me a second, I'll get that going. Right, here goes, people. What happened there?
No, I didn't.
I do apologize. You know what? I do apologize for that. I'll play it again if you don't mind too much. It's just because I hit spacebar because I was replying to somebody in the chat. Sorry about that. Okay, over to you, Dave.
A very noisy bunch of howler monkeys there. It was good, nice sounds, a little bit monotonous. I think I'd have tried to have chosen a different section to that. I'd start it a bit further in and let it go on a little bit more, because it started to build up then, and then it faded away. Whether they stopped or not, I don't know. That's my only criticism, really, but that's a lovely sound, very startling sound. Not much in the background. I could hear one bird, I could hear cockerel crowing all the time, but that's nice.
I was just going to say, we had a earlier comment about the impact of anthropogenic sounds. So what's your take on that?
Well, that was fine. Didn't interfere with it at all. I don't think that was. I mean, it might have been a jungle fowl for all we know, but it probably was a cockerel. But it didn't really take anything away from the recording. I don't think. That's the way I look at it. If it doesn't interfere too much and take your mind off it, you just accept it. It's fine. It's a bit different when you got human voices. They always distract you straight away, take you away from it. But something like a cockerel. But a dog barking as well, that's a bit annoying as well. Dog barking. It's difficult. It depends on the recording, what effect it does on your listening, whether it takes you away from it or not. I think that's the thing. It's so hard to get everything perfect. And you don't want it to sound like it's in a vacuum. You know, here sometimes someone gets one single bird singing and there's nothing around it at all, and it just doesn't sound natural. So some sounds, I think, are part of it, as it was. And you should be recording as it was, really, as you heard it. You shouldn't change it and doctor it so it's all different. It's got to be as you actually heard it. And if there was something in the background, well, it was there.
Yeah.
If it doesn't take too much away from it, that's fine. The fades slightly improved them a little bit more fade, I think, on those, both ends.
Okay. Right, Chris, you had a question?
Yeah, to go back to dogs barking and cocks crowing. Somebody asked earlier on about anthropogenic sounds, as you said. For the competition, I understand we can't edit out dog barking because that's a spot edit.
That's right.
At times. But how do we feel about traffic rumble and aircraft passing over? Because, you know, I feel living in Switzerland, I'm at the crossroads of all of Europe's air corridors, and there's always echoes of traffic from the valleys and so on. What's the feeling about that?
Well, it's the balance. If you can get the balance, so you got your subject is the main focal point. It's very hard to say what level you've got to do it at, really, but whether you can filter. If you filter the whole sequence out, you should be able to get rid of some of the rumble at least.
Yeah, I mean, I've done this in the past, just across the whole file, and you just choose a certain
you have to,
frequency band and reduce it by a certain number of decibels till it becomes my level of tolerance, sort of thing. But again, this is just a subjective judgment, I guess.
Well, I don't think it's within the judge's power to say that's going to be chucked out because I could hear an airplane in the background. Just about. Again, I think it's up to the judges to take the.
Yeah, I think that this is one of those things where it's one of those things where it comes down to the individual judge on the one hand, but I think it's also a case of, and this is something it's very hard to account for as well. I think it also comes down to, you know, what else other people have, you know, what the other entries are that you are sort of competing against, Chris.
Yes, of course, there's that element as well. Yeah. But I mean, it's, you know, where a bird that's near the water all the time, and you've got the rushing water, that's intrusive. But if you can get that balance, so the water is much lower than the actual bird itself, or whatever it is you're recording, or the mammal, it's okay. It's the levels, really, of how much interference it is. That's my take anyway.
I was just struck by Ian's comment earlier on where Ian said that he quite often gets a lot of entries that are very quiet recordings. And I don't know whether that's a volume issue or whether you're saying that they cut out the background a lot.
Yeah, it could be, yeah. You overfilter it, yes.
Well,
no, by quiet, I didn't mean quiet with no background. I meant quiet that the level's low.
Overall levels were low.
A level,
okay.
too low a level rather than, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, as I said, I did mention the Black Grouse recording that we had a few years ago that was silent in the silences, and it was, and one of the judges went, sounds like this has been hammered, but it hadn't, and as you said, it, as Dave said, it sounded false. It didn't sound, the recording of the Black Grouse was phenomenal, but it didn't sound realistic in that there was nothing else. There was, and sometimes that little bit of an extra background actually adds to it rather than detracts from it.
Yeah, if you dock it out completely, it sounds weird. It just doesn't sound.
But this was a natural recording. This was the actual recording was totally silent in the silences, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And so there was no. It must have been done in the early morning, very early morning before anything else was making a noise or something. I don't know, but yeah, anthropogenic is a very difficult one, and I wouldn't. If somebody wants to include a motorbike driving through, then include a motorbike driving through and see what happens. That's the point, you know.
If that's the only time you could get that particular recording, it was so rare and interesting. That's the only time you got it was with a motorbike. Well,
I was just going to say, I suppose
it's worth it.
At the end of the day, the ultimate thing is going to be is the recording that good that the motorbike doesn't really detract from the recording. Then it'll work. Or the alternative, of course, would be if the motorbike is actually part of the story, because obviously, if your recording is of howler monkeys and how they're adapting to living in cities, then it's perfectly within the remit.
The other thing about filtering as well, you must be careful that you don't change the sound of the bird as well. You can use frequencies of that. You start dropping things down and that, and
yeah.
You really upset the sound of the bird. I just mentioned something to Chris about that non-avian.
Yeah.
The entry itself doesn't have to be a class winner either. I think I'm right in saying this, Ian. It could be any entry that's put in and it's non-avian, considered the best non-avian that it was. It doesn't have to win a class.
Absolutely. Just like the Fieldcraft is the same. It's it's the best non-avian entry in the competition. Although from all doesn't include not including the creative. From the other four categories, it could be any recording from individual species combination or habitat. It's any of those. It's a best non-avian entry.
But sorry, Ian, if I remember correctly, as far as the Fieldcraft, that is something that you specifically have to request your entry be considered for.
Absolutely.
You have to write your methods in. Anyway, you put how you did it and what Fieldcraft you used.
Yeah, whereas non-avian, you don't necessarily have to specify that you want it considered for non-avian. That's the only point I'm trying to make. That's all.
You're absolutely right. But one thing to be sure is that and something else that I quite often find with recordings is that are sent to me that nearly everybody will put their name on the recording, so I've got to strip that off the name of the title of the track before I send it to the judges. Make sure there's no metadata, if you can, please, because quite often the metadata includes your name and wherever it was recorded and all the data. So sometimes the metadata I have to go in and start playing around with. The recording should be 44 1 and 16-bit. I am a bit lenient with that one. You don't have to be quite so dogmatic about that. The only advantage to it is that if it is, that when it then is put onto the CD for the sound magazine, there's less work for Simon to do. He doesn't have to start changing the bit rates and the and whatever. So it is at best if you could do. From my perspective, it's not really a problem. It's just further down the line that when it comes to putting everything together for the sound magazine, it helps Simon out a bit more. Yeah, that's a bit. But try not to make sure there's nothing there that can identify who you are when you've entered. Sorry.
And you receive it by WeTransfer or?
This year, I think I've had 4 different means of sending it to me. Right. Even had some through the jolly old post. Yes, I got entry forms through as physical pieces of paper, which is unusual. Yeah, if you can, next year I will try to get a fillable form on the website so that you can actually download a fillable form, because lots of people will write out in longhand and then take a photograph of the document and send me a photograph of the documents. But yeah, WeTransfer, there's Google, whatever it's called, yeah, there are various means of sending me data. And as long as I can open it up, if I can't, I'll just send you an email saying, please send it another way. Whatever you do, don't include it in an email, because it won't get to me. When you get multiple megabytes of data in an email, there's not going to happen.
I find WeTransfer works very easily and very well.
Very straightforward. Very straightforward.
It tells me when you've got it. It tells you when you've opened it. It tells you it's going to expire.
Yeah, Dropbox is as good as well. But also, Google.
And then, sorry to interrupt, or just something else. And Ian can elaborate on this, but it's just purely I've had the experience today because someone sent an entry to me by mistake. Also, use an email address that is registered or that is easily identifiable, rather than using an email address that is hidden away or masked or whatever they call it, and making yourself difficult to track down.
But the email address should be on the entry form.
No, but from the actual entry.
Oh yeah. Well, the two usually come together.
I didn't get an entry form. I just got an entry.
Yeah, fine. You shouldn't have gone to you anyway.
Well, exactly. Well, this is the thing. I got I just got the thing from WeTransfer, and I was just about to hit download, and then I read it again, and and he said, "Oh, this is my entry for the competition." So I emailed him back and said, "Is this for the competition or the listening session regarding the competition? Because if it's for the competition, you send it to the wrong place."
Good stuff. Well done.
And all he signed off was his name, no surname or anything, and he had one of those alias emails. So I couldn't even try and track him down. I just had to reply via WeTransfer again, and hope that it goes to the right person. Sorry, just on a side note, obviously, Dave, you wouldn't have experienced, or you wouldn't have, or maybe you did notice to start off with, but this particular piece that we just played was a little bit hot, so it was actually causing a bit of what's the word? Distortion.
It was, I've heard howler monkeys, but I don't know whether there are different types of howler monkeys, so I didn't like to say too much about that. But it wasn't a really clear call, was it?
Yeah. No, I just want to make the point, further to what Ian was saying early on, that he doesn't sort of adjust any of the recordings. Once again, this is one of those things. I suppose if your judges have got the prospect of 2 days worth of recordings to listen to, the last thing you want them to be doing is pushing the volume up, or the fade is up for one recording and then pulling it down for the next recording, and then constantly adjusting the faders.
And of course, another thing, it's a bit pot luck, because I'm not that familiar with howler monkey calls, but another judge might be very familiar with it and could sort of say something different about it more than I could.
True. Anybody else got any questions with regards to the judges' comments on that particular track? Okay, in that case, Andy.
I got a flight there, didn't I?
As I say, that was Andy Martin's recording. So, Andy, you got anything to yeah? This is where you win this time around, Dave, because you actually have the recorders who can give you some input.
Yeah. Yeah. That. On the note of it distorting, the file itself wasn't distorting. That was the input to Zoom from Reaper that was overloading. But yeah, it's that was actually there are no edits to that other than the fade, and except I did, and it's marked in the file. There are 4 moments where I cut out just a lot of space between the monkeys, because they, they'll howl, and then you'll wait a long time. And in order to fit it in for 2 minutes just for the listening session, I just cut out some of that space.
Where was it, Andy?
I'm sorry?
Where was it?
It was on a private reserve on the Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica.
Costa Rica, lovely. Mm.
Yeah, the reserve borders against the north side of Corcovado National Park.
Yeah.
So the rooster that you heard belongs to the owner of the reserve, and there's no way to not record there without hearing the rooster.
No, I don't think it took anything away from it at all. That was fine.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. I do have a question though about there was the comment about about the monotony, and I wonder, is there a line between monotonous and sort of hypnotic? Because like I was saying before, one of the things I really love is in long recordings where you just have this behavior that goes on and on and on from voices in the soundscape. And part of that is that repetitiveness that can drive sort of a hypnotic wave, and is where is the line, I guess, between monotony and that kind of hypnotic feeling? Or
difficult one. I think if I was there, Andy, listen to them, I'd sit there all day listening to them. It'd be great, fantastic. But having to just play it back in amongst a lot of others, you feel a little bit hurried. I think that's if it wasn't a competition, just listening to that at home on my own, I'd probably enjoy lots and lots of it. But because it's in that environment of a competition with lots to hear, you probably get a bit more impatient. I don't know, it's just my thoughts. But I think listening to it live would be fantastic for hours,
That's a good point. Yeah, I don't always think of things in the context of a competition like that. So that's a really excellent point.
Andy, I think once again it boils down back to this thing of it depends on the individual judges, really.
Yeah.
I know when I was a judge a couple of years ago, there was one particular recording of a bird that you'll definitely hopefully be very familiar with, a whippoorwill, and I mean 2 minutes of that just constantly going on. There was no it wasn't flying around or anything. It was perched, so it was pretty much monotonous in the sense that the volume stayed the same. There was no variation in the call, and as good a recording as it was in terms of noise handling and the quality and all of that sort of thing, it just got to the point where, in all honesty, by the end of it, you were quite relieved that it was over. Having said that, obviously a whippoorwill in general is more monotonous, I would say, than listening to it for 2 minutes anyhow, than the howler monkeys, for example.
This is again, I think you said something right there. There are 3 judges, right?
Yeah.
In total. So that's a personal point of view. maybe the other two judges would find it different a bit in terms of a creative. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. It's sort of like, that's a creative point of view, which it makes sense. But if it's contextualized a bit more, that will make more sense, and then the monotony gets away. Let's say.
Yeah, I mean, the thing of it is, if we just go back to the whippoorwill, for example, if it was a case of what made it monotonous was that the bird's position relative to the microphones was static as well. If it was, exactly the same number of song phrases, but for example, a bird in the left-hand side talking to a bird on the right-hand side, it probably wouldn't have come across as being quite as monotonous as it potentially did. So I think it's also a case of how it's not how it's presented, but the nature of the recording.
But also the title maybe could say something a bit more about the recordings. That would sort of help to contextualize it a little bit. If the title sort of drives your attention towards something that is happening in the recording, maybe to us now it sound maybe today it sounded monotonous now, but if there is something in the title that makes it a bit more catchy, that could be more interesting, wouldn't it?
Possibly.
No.
Yeah, I'm not so sure.
I'm not sure. Wouldn't possibly influence me.
I was going to say, I don't recall being influenced by any of the titles.
I recall, I mean, I think it's a few years ago now that someone made an entry with the wrong species on it. The species he recorded, he put a different name on.
Oh yeah, that's not great.
Yeah, no.
Not great.
Well,
yeah, but that's sorry.
Yeah, but that is one where I was asked to identify the species, and I said, I don't care. Again, it goes back to the photograph. If you saw a photograph, you wouldn't say, "Oh, that's not the Tyne Bridge. That's the bridge over the Severn or something." It's a photograph of the bridge. If the identification is wrong, that shouldn't, in my opinion, influence the judge, because, all right, they got it wrong, but it's the recording you're judging, not the identification of the species. Yeah. So that to me, I went back and went, actually, I don't care whether it's right, wrong, or otherwise. And in one particular case, I had no idea, because it was something from whoever knows where. But the famous one I put in years ago was Garden Warbler, and various people were absolutely adamant that it was a blackcap. It wasn't. Yeah. It was definitely 100% guaranteed a Garden Warbler, but it wasn't going to win a competition. I won the restricted one many years ago, but that's a long time ago. But yeah, to my opinion, and that's why I keep going back to it, is you have to judge it from the recording point of view.
In the actual rules, it doesn't say you have to name the species, does it?
No, exactly. No, exactly.
You could just say warbler at sunrise or something.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, being that it's an international competition, I mean, Sue can send in a submission and call it whatever she, I mean, she can record a lyrebird and tell us it's a howler monkey, and I'm not going to know the difference. But once again, as you say, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
That might be a problem when we came to the non-avian bit. That's all.
Yeah. But I mean, other than that, it should be about the recording once again, rather than anything else.
Yeah, and how it sounds to you and what effect it has on you at that time.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Does
that help, or does it make it more complicated for everybody?
Can I ask really quick before you move on to anything else? What category would you take this as a submission in? Would this be a species, or would this be a habitat?
Yeah, definitely a species. Yeah, there's more than one, wouldn't there?
Yeah, definitely.
Ian, species.
It sounded like more than one to me.
If there's only one calling, then it's an individual. But I think my opinion would be species. But you know, if you can say, well, actually there was only one call and it kept on facing away and it made it sound quieter, or you know, or this. In Britain, we have a bird called a grasshopper warbler, which when it turns its head away, it makes it sound quiet, and then it turns back towards it, it goes loud again. And quite often people think there's more than one bird. Or a corn crake, for example, which people think are ventriloquists because they reckon they can throw their voice. It sounds like there's more than one bird. But the bittern, I think, was another prime example where people thought there were multiple males and there wasn't. There was just one and it kept on moving about. It's difficult if you don't know for sure, but if you know for sure, there's
I'm
only
sure
one.
you could hear them calling at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but what I'm saying is, you have to. We, as from our point of view, have to rely on the entrant to be definitive, to say what it is. We can't tell them what it is.
Like in this case, I labeled it howlers rather than a howler.
Correct.
Yes.
There were definite groups calling back and forth.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, guys.
Right, Axel, where do you want to go with your recordings? How do you want us to handle them?
To handle my recordings?
Yeah.
They've been judged already.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. How?
Maybe, I don't know. You can play,
and then you tell us why you submitted them.
Play a failure and play then the winner.
Well, how must I know which is the failure?
Okay, play the failure then.
Which is the failure? Tell me and I'll play it.
Which is the failure? It's obvious which one is the failure. One that sounds awful. No, it's a urban owl.
Okay, urban. Right. Okay. Right, gentlemen. Here we go. And lady. Sorry, apologize for that.
We're going to pull this apart, Axel.
Go away.
Why, it says it's already been pulled apart. Here we go. Right.
Do you want me to say first why I submitted it and why I thought it was cool, and then you
no, well,
then...
I just wanted to point out that in that particular case, regardless of what your opinion is about anthropogenic sounds, it was called urban howl. So obviously you can't sort of turn around and say, you know, as far as your judging criteria, turn around and say that you take issue with the fact that there was a dog calling and a motorbike or whatever, a car or whatever it was going past. You agree with that, Dave?
Yeah, it was such an amazing sound. It kept my attention going, and I did hear the dog, but it wasn't too intrusive because I was concentrating on what on earth is this noise.
Yeah,
never heard anything like that before.
So right. To me, when I submitted it, I was like, well, it's sort of like, to me in this moment, it's sort of like I felt that the golden jackals started calling because they were triggered by the car passing by.
Ah, right.
And that was the interaction that I sort of liked, and I thought that could be interesting if it's understandable, but it's not. It was, maybe I should have written something on the title, but even though it doesn't change, but that's why I called it Urban Howl. And it didn't get even considered for any prize, so in any category. So I'm like, well, maybe there are a few things that could have happened there. It was too noisy because you can hear a lot of going.
Yeah.
That was something that annoyed me, but I sort of risked it anyway. I was like, let's give it a try. It could have been the traffic maybe there was too much interaction with the traffic, but I don't think that could have ruined could have like judged it negatively that much. Or also there were there were really some really good recordings last year that in the end I was like, all right, cool, this is something really nice. So that's my sort of like criterion why it didn't end up getting anything.
Right. My based on what you just said, Axel, my observation is that the 2-minute time span is what restricts you here, because essentially from one interaction, it's hard to see that there was a direct call and response from the jackals relative to the vehicles passing, because it's just a single incident.
Makes sense. Yeah, it wasn't clear enough, that interaction.
Yeah, so you need more than a 2-minute recording to sort of get that. For that to become clear.
That's what you mean, yeah.
Okay.
See, sorry, Dave. So I mean, in this particular example, we only know that because you said that. Otherwise, it's very hard to pick that up. Well, it's impossible to pick it up.
Certainly amazing calls from the jackals. They're really going for it. And it just grabbed me straight away when they started howling.
I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but I mean, I've heard plenty of jackals in Africa. So to me, what was more obvious was the fact that the dogs were responding to the jackals.
Yeah. See, there again, it's new to me, the jackals. Never heard a live jackal.
Yeah, to me, that was a moment that was a moment for me of really like struggling with noise pollution and the concept of noise pollution, and I've been really like struggling mentally with dealing with getting 90% of the recordings with noise pollution. So that was a sort of moment of interaction, personal interaction, that sort of was really strong for me, but it didn't come across clearly as strong. But yeah, that's it. It's totally cool. There are many reasons why.
Well, I suppose, just, once again, coming from South Africa and having dabbled in photography, taking on Ian's previous comparisons to photography, something that in photographic circles that frequently got thrown about is, and I suppose we do need to take, not from the judge's point of view necessarily, but as a entrant, it's important to bear this in mind, and that is that a recording of a rare or rather a photograph of a rare animal doesn't necessarily make it a good photograph. And I think that's the thing as well. You need to be careful that you don't, not that I'm saying this happened in this case, Axel, but if it's something that you've always chased after and you've tried to get it, that personal satisfaction could possibly sway your bias your opinion of the actual recording. You might think it's a lot better than it was in reality. Or alternatively, as in this case, because you had the experience of the entire experience, there's a lot more to it that doesn't come across in the recording either.
Yeah.
But you had to make that recording, Axel, didn't you? You couldn't say, I won't switch on because there's a noise.
Oh, definitely, I agree.
Not worth doing,
Oh yeah, absolutely. But maybe that one could have become then a documentary instead, because there is a funny story there. I heard them actually the first time when I was sitting in the toilet at my mom's place after months. I tried to record them hiking for
I wouldn't put that in the documentary.
I think that would be really funny though.
Yeah.
They will contextualize it more, because right now it contextualize it anyway.
Okay. Ian, so what's your take on that then, as far as categorizing?
I mean, it's patently a species, unless you want to think it's a combination, but I don't think so. I put it down as species because I knew it was the golden jackals because Axel did it, put the entry in last year. It was just, and I found it interesting, but it was never ever going to win a competition because of the background and the problem we've got, and this is the issue whereby I don't pass on data to the judges, is that you can't put the context to the judges. You can't say, this was the jackals responding to the cars passing of the dogs and things like that. That's obviously can't be done. Whereas the documentary, where you just said, whereby it started off, we sat in on the toilet and I heard, that would have been easily, you could have built the narration around it. You could built the storyline and got it all in there. And you've got to sort of make sure you put the entry in, knowing that the competition has got certain restrictions and certain limitations. The recording is not to my taste, but it has its own merits and whatever. Of course it has. It's not a competition entry as far as I'm concerned, because the competition has these certain guidelines, and though that means you've got to try to keep yourself to rein it into that competition.
Yeah,
and that's the point I'm trying to get across. I'm not, because if I had to record it, I'd be absolutely over the moon by it. But it's never ever going to win a competition.
No, the expectations now have got pretty high, I think, haven't they, from people to expect a competition winner to be really, really top class.
Well, it's not just that, David. You've got to see it from a point of view of what are you up against.
Yeah,
that's the other thing. As you said, Axel, the entries last year were pretty damn good, and they are every year. I really don't envy the judges' job, to be honest. But at the same time, you've also got to think, well, we are reasonably biased against anthropomorphic sounds. We don't. Sometimes we can accept them and say, yeah, but we generally, I don't think you'll find many Silver Fox winners that have got a dog barking or a motorbike or a car or an airplane.
Yeah,
they tend to be a clean sound recording of quite often species, habitat, occasionally an individual, but that's the area we tend to go, and that's where you've got to know your audience in that sense. You know what I mean? You've got to say, right, I know what I'm putting it in for, and I know this is how it's going to go. That's my opinion anyway.
But that's a good shout though from Axel. We've heard so far this evening, on the one hand, people who enjoy long form recordings, which kind of like disqualify themselves, which is going to be a bit harder to work with. But then by the same token, the species you're recording doesn't read the rules. They don't know that they need to try and present an interesting performance all within the span of a 2-minute time frame. So at least you can look at it from the point of view and think a bit sort of outside the box, as it were, and say, right, I've got these recordings, but it's essentially a 2-minute clip of a bird calling, but it spans 15 minutes in real time. But if you think creatively, you might still be able to use that otherwise really good recording, but just present it in a different fashion, i.e. through the documentary section, or if necessary, or alternatively the creative section.
Bye, Chris. Yeah, that makes total sense. It's really good to do this now, because I thought in a different way last year when I sent it. So when I submitted it, so it's really good to get the actual point of view and a reason why it couldn't. So that's brilliant.
Yeah, so that was a good example, actually, to play. That was to show exactly what we mean about the is the noise worth putting up with to get such a good sound? That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I'm just scared that sort of this drives people a bit off from submitting.
Yeah,
The
could
only
do. Yeah.
thing it could do. But I think it's worth at least submitting one recording, just to get the feel of submitting. And you never know, because if you wanna just listen to the other recording that actually won the non-avian award and the overall restricted award, I thought it was a cool recording, but I didn't think it was actually going to win anything. The between the two gibbons one.
Okay, right. We'll listen to that then, shall we? Between two
Just
gibbons.
yeah. But then then we are almost hitting the 2 hours, so I guess we can wrap it up.
Okay, so he has Between Two Gibbons. So, sorry, Axel, is this the one that got the Silver Fox a couple of years ago? Is that correct?
He didn't get not the Silver Fox, the overall overall restricted, because it was the first time that I was joining in.
Okay, fair enough. Right, here we go.
Lovely.
Very nice indeed.
I like the way it ended. It's just perfect. That was.
It's almost like they read a script or a musical score. But to me this recording is really personal, really personal. And I just felt like I'm gonna submit it. It's a really cool recording. I'm really happy with it, But I didn't. It was the first time that I was actually submitting. I was like, yeah, sounds cool. And in the end, he ended up ticking many boxes that I wasn't expecting. So.
I mean, there was lots of different calls going on all the time, wasn't there? It kept you interested all the time through.
Yeah, there were two of them calling, and I mean, I was there also, literally. I was holding the mic, so I could actually, understand what was going on. But that didn't change. That context that I put myself in didn't change the fact that there was a nice sonic interaction between two gibbons. And the end was just like perfect. When they finished, I was like, my God, that was just like brilliant. But yeah.
Where was that, Axel?
In Thailand.
Very good.
In Thailand, yeah. But yeah, I think that's I didn't expect that it was going to get competing. It was getting anything, but in the end it did. So you never know really at the beginning when you start submitting, if you got something that is actually really good. And then after for the past like 4 years, I haven't been on any category, even though I thought I had good recordings. So it's, you know, it's maybe the luck of the first time or whatever, but you know, it's I never had this sort of also listening session and discussing these sort of things, the recording. So it's really nice to be able to do it now and understanding a bit more why also this one got up there.
It's a brilliant recording.
Yeah.
No two ways about it. It's absolutely fantastic.
I couldn't criticise it at all. I couldn't fault anything. It's just lovely.
Well, I'm going to stir the pot a bit, because I think Andy was a bit worried. He thinks it might be a little bit monotonous.
Oh,
well, I think the calls were changing as it went along.
Yeah.
I didn't find it monotonous. I thought
No,
it was,
I'm just yanking your chain, Andy. I mean,
don't bite, Andy. Don't bite.
But it goes to what I was saying early on, where how, you know, what could potentially be monotonous, but the fact that you could clearly hear that it was two monkeys that were communicating with each other, and the constant change in pitch also, you know, steers you away from ever getting bored with it.
And it's sort of the story. There was a story in it,
yeah.
Wasn't it? It sort of finished. The finish was like you know.
They got very excited, didn't they? At the end.
That's it, you know. Boy, yeah. And the whole thing about that recording had everything that a competition entry would want. And I know that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about the first recording we heard was a good recording, no question, but we're looking at competition entries here, and that's a subtly different thing.
Yeah, the first one will be good on the Sound magazine,
exactly, or a documentary or whatever. Yeah. But we're, you know, that's as I said, you've got to know your audience.
As I say, I mean, this last recording, I mean, it stands on its own in isolation, whereas the previous one
needs some explanation.
Needed explanation, yeah.
So, Axel, that was in Thailand, you say? Yeah.
Yes.
The life you lead, Axel, is my dream. You seem to be gone everywhere. Now you're in Senegal.
Yeah. Living in the back of a van.
Yeah.
The only thing, yeah.
The
last time that I used a toilet, that was when I recorded the jackals. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm putting myself. I mean, it is yes, it's challenges, but I just trying to build my own. I realize that I can't do, you know, things that I really don't enjoy, and I need to do something that I really love right now and try to make it work. So I'm doing my best really to get things going in the way that I want, and bring out the artist that is in me and try to make it happen that way.
And he even gets mentions in birdwatching magazines, you see, as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was a piece about Andalusia.
Yeah, because I met it was from the Global Bird Fair founder, one of the two founders, that she wrote something about Andalusia, and then we met them also there while we were going down south to Morocco, and it was a nice connection for the migratory birds. So that's why we ended up there also, and we've been working with the Global Bird Fair also, which is cool. So that's why. But I just like should we just like as we are doing this thing live also, should we just wrap up this whole listening session somehow? I'm not sure how.
Well,
how do we wrap it up?
I'm not sure. Well, all I want to say is we hope that's whet your appetite. We really do encourage you to get your entries in for the competition. There's not much time, but there is some time. And I'm sure you all must at least, even sitting now, think that you have at least one recording that might be worthy. But yes, thank you everybody for attending. Yeah, this is the last listening session for the year, so I wish you all a happy new year and good
Thanks for organising it, Hans.
Good
It was
recording
very
for the
pleased
next
to do
year.
that.
No, this is Axel was involved in
And
this
Axel.
one, heavily involved in this one. So Axel, I'll give you the final word.
Cause in trouble, always cause trouble. And no, just like submit it. It's no, don't be scared. And then I hope that after, when all the recordings, if they don't get into the final categories, they get into the Sound magazine or they get discussed afterwards. So it's always nice to also submit it and say, oh, I submitted my recording. It's the beginning, and then something happens, something doesn't happen, but something that feels right for you, just submit it. And I think it's fun, and it's something unexpected can happen also. So give it a try.
Well, and if you've submitted that recording, like Axel says, it gets to the Sound magazine hopefully, and even if it doesn't, you can always send it into one of these listening sessions, and we can, you can tell us why you entered it, and everybody else can have a listen and tell you why they think it should have won, or alternatively why they think it didn't win.
And nobody on the call at the moment has entered.
Oh, plenty of time, Ian. Plenty of time.
Oh
dear.
Anyway, so just for the people on the live stream, as I said, Happy New Year, good evening, and good night.
Good night, everyone.
We're staying on though.
Yeah, we can stay here.